Welcome to Teaching in Fusion. This session, we're going to show you how to teach an initial session to students new to Clickteam Fusion 2.5. We'll help you make an arcade maze game. We'll show you how to install Clickteam. Then there's the tutorial. You can use this to learn the software and just pause in between sections to allow you to complete the tasks. In the next section, we'll teach you how to set up the session. And finally, we'll go in depth with the techniques we use to teach Clickteam Fusion. To download the free edition of Clickteam Fusion, head to clickteam.com, and if you scroll down, you'll see the link, and choose to download the PC version. Once it's downloaded, run the installation, and you can see that it explains the limitations of the free edition. Agree with the terms and conditions, and I'd make sure you install the examples and the library and choose your location. In the following tutorial, in the bottom left corner, we will reference sections of the Thinking in Fusion video manual which explain the processes you're doing in more depth. Have a go at this tutorial. Once installed, run the application. You'll see we're using version 295.10. If you get the tutorial pop-up, just close it, and we'll maximize Clickteam. I'll refer to things as the top menu, the workspace toolbar, and the properties toolbar. So we'll start building our game by choosing File and New. You'll see the workspace toolbar now has Application 1 and Frame 1. That's our game and the first level. In the free edition, we have a limit. If we have 2 applications open, we will exceed the limits of the free edition. We close the window with OK or Escape, and then right-click and close your application to restore the features. This is the storyboard editor, but we won't stay here very long in this session. To start building our game, we need to be in the frame editor. Select your frame by clicking on the thumbnail and then go into the frame editor, which is the grey rectangle with the bluey indigo line at the side. This shows our frame, our level. It's shown as a white area with a dark grey area outside of it. If we run our application to test our game, you'll see we can see the white area in the window. And notice we have a red circle with yellow lightning as the icon for when we test our application. If we try to do some actions while we're testing our application, they may be grayed out. So always make sure that you stop testing your application by choosing Run and Stop or closing your test application. Because our level's completely blank, we'll need to add something into it, and everything we insert is called an object. So click on the top menu, Insert. We will insert a new object, which will be our player's character. It'll be active because it moves. Click active, press OK, and click to put it somewhere in the white frame area, in the play area. Now we run our application, we have the bluey green diamond there, but it doesn't move. That won't be any good for our character. Close our test application. With our active object selected, we'll look at the properties. Now, if you don't have your properties toolbar, you can turn it back on, clicking on the top menu, View, Toolbars, Properties. You can also sometimes detach it. To reattach it, drag the dotted area into the bottom corner to dock it back in place. Now if we select the blue running person in the properties, we get the movement options. The current type of movement is set as static. Static means staying still. We will change this to 8 directions, but not physics 8 directions, the 8 directions with an EIGHT. That means all the code for moving in 8 directions has been added. If we run our application, and if we use the arrow keys, the cursor keys on the keyboard, we can move. But oh no, it's gone. Or has it? We can lose our player's character off the screen, and that won't be any good in a real game. Close our test application. So we're going to go into the next editor, which allows us to add in code. It's called the event editor, and it's a 3x3 grid that looks a little bit like a calendar. Select that. The event editor works as a grid. It has conditions and actions shown as ticks. A condition is if something's happening. We will need to tell our game what actions to take when something happens. We'll get it to check if something's happening by clicking the words new condition, not the box, but actually on the letters. The new condition window pops up and our condition is to do with the active. Their position, test position of active. This brings up a window representing our frame area, which is currently white in our game, and the outside area, which is dark grey. We want to select the 4 arrows that point from the frame area outside and press OK. That will check if the object is leaving the frame, the play area. If you didn't select all the arrows, it will show it differently. If that happens, double click on it and make sure you select all the arrows. Now we have a condition that's being checked. We can add the action tick in. On the row, active leaves the play area. We're going to right click as a shortcut to bring up the possible actions. If you left click, nothing happens. If you double left click, you'll end up in the event list editor and you'll need to press escape or click back on the event editor. We're going to right click to bring up the possible actions. Under movement, we can choose stop, bounce and wraparound play area, which will teleport to the other side. I'll choose bounce. I will, off the top menu, run my application and I will test it by trying to move outside of the frame. So close our test application. If you want to change that action, you can't just right click and choose a different movement because both will be applied. You need to delete by right clicking and choosing delete, the option you don't want, or you can drag a blank action over to erase all the actions. Right click and apply a new movement action. Now it's not really a game. There's no objective, so we're going to add in an enemy. So let's go back to our frame editor, which is the grey rectangle with the bluey indigo line at the side. So insert a new object, active, and click to place it down. Then we run into an issue. For the player, there's an issue that both of these objects look the same, that the names are just active and active2 for what the objects are. To rename something, we can just click on it once to select it, and it'll have a blue box around it. In our properties window, we can select the yellow circle with the letter I in it. We can click on its name and type in a new name. For the enemy active2, I'll call it bad, and for our character, I will call it P1. It's good to use short names to avoid spelling mistakes. Now, to change their look, we don't want to change the icon. The icon is just what shows up in our object list on the side. To edit the actual picture of the object, you can either right click on the object and choose edit. You can press enter or double click on it. This will bring up the picture editor. Now this isn't a saucepan, it's a magnifying glass. By using the scroll wheel or dragging the slider, we can zoom in and see the object closer. I'm going to select the fill bucket and set a high tolerance. Tolerance is how much difference something can take. I'll choose a green colour and fill it in. I could also use the brush tool and select a colour to add some features. Now don't just close it or press cancel, we have to press OK to confirm our changes. I'll do the same with the bad character to give it a different picture. If we run our application now, you'll see that P1 isn't affected by the bad character. That's because we haven't put any events about it in. So back to the event editor, the one that looks like a calendar. We'll click on the words new condition. We'll click on P1, collision, another object, and the bad. Now, if you choose the wrong object by mistake, you can just double click on any of the icons and select a different object to create the right condition. The action for this condition is we're going to destroy P1. So right click under P1 and at the bottom choose destroy. Run your application and touch the bad character. P1 is gone. There's only one object in our game now. It's not very difficult to survive our game. Close our test application. So let's go back to our frame editor. the bad character object, go to movement properties and change its type to bouncing ball. Not physics bouncing ball, but bouncing ball. Now if we run our application, we can see that the bad character moves off and keeps going. Every time we restart, they start in a random direction and just move off. But it's a good time to learn that we can use F2 or the rewind button to restart our application while we're testing it. Let's go in the event editor and fix that leaving of screen. New condition is the same as before. Bad, position, test position of bad. Select those 4 arrows, and if you make a mistake we can just double click on it again. And right click this time under bad, not P1, movement, and it needs to be bounce because it's a bouncing ball. If it was to stop, it wouldn't start again. We got hit straight away, but if we restart it with F2, you can see that now our bad character is bouncing around the screen. You might see they occasionally get stuck in one bounce, and you could change that in its movement properties, its randomness and security. Let's give a way of getting points in our game. Close your test application. We'll head to the frame editor and we'll insert another new object, another active object, which will be our coin. Click to put it down, and we'll rename it by clicking on the yellow eye, the coin, and we'll press enter to bring up the picture editor and use the white piece of paper on the picture editor, not the top bar, clear button, and the ellipse tool, filled in version, to create a coin. Press OK. Now when our player touches the coin, nothing will happen. We haven't put any code in for it, but the player will expect to get a score. So let's insert a new object to display our score, and the score object grows to the left. So place it on the right hand side of the screen. If it's on the left, when it becomes 10, the 1 will be cut off from screen. So put it on the right hand side. Go to the event editor and we'll go new condition that when P1 collides with another object, the coin, or the coin collides with P1, both of those will trigger the same action. Under the coin, we don't want to make the coin invisible, we want to destroy it so it no longer exists. If it's invisible, we could still collect it, and our score will update, but the score object only displays our score. To control our score, it's held in the player object, player 1, that's yourself playing the game. So right click under that blue headed P1, score, add to score, not set score. This is the expression editor for writing numbers. Let's put in a number between 1 and 100. It needs to be way less than 1 million because scores actually max out at around 2.1 billion. Choose a number less than 100. When we run our application, we touch the coin, we get a point, but that's all we can do. So close our test application. One way of doing it would be to create a new object, to create a new coin. We've destroyed the old coin and we could create a new one. But if there's only one coin on screen, we could actually delete the destroy action and replace it with a repositioning. So right click under the coin, position, select position, which brings up the view of our frame. We might need to move the mini window out of the way so we can see our bad character. By clicking on the bad character, it makes it relative to. We could also just click relative to and select the bad character from that menu to link its position. Now if we run our application, every time we collect the coin is repositioned to where the bad character is, making it look like the bad character's dropping the coins. Because our level's so empty, things can become quite predictable. So in a moment, we'll add in some walls. But before we do that, let's close our test application and go to the frame editor and look at the movement properties for both objects. You can look at the movement properties, their speed, acceleration, deceleration, randomness. Altering these values will change the way that the objects move. So have a go with that. Also, you might want to change your character artwork. Press enter for the picture editor. So let's insert a new object to be our wall. Walls don't move, so it could be backdrop, but for this session, we're sticking with active. Give it a name under properties with the yellow eye for about. Right click and edit it, or press enter for the picture editor. Clear the image and fill it in with a solid color. But don't stretch it. We're going to keep this object as one square and use it in the same way as Lego bricks are used to build bigger things. I will place it between P1 and the bad character to protect P1 from being hit immediately. Let's add the events in for this wall. So in the event editor that looks like a calendar, click the words new condition, P1, collision, another object, and the wall. Right click under P1, movement, stop. A new condition for the bad, collision, another object wall, and this time under the bad object, right click and movement bounce because it is a bouncing ball. Run our application. Now P1 can't go through the wall, and for the bad object, it just seems to be avoiding it. But if we restart our application a few times, we can see it's also working for the bad object. We've got the makings of a game now, so let's save it. From the top menu, File and Save. Write your name and save it. At any point now, you can go and press the red disk to resave your work. The level's still quite blank, but we've got all the objects we need to make a little game. To add multiple instances of an object, you can drag it from the object list into your frame. Click, hold down, and move it across. All these objects are the same thing, so all of the events for the wall apply to all the walls. Another way of adding in extra objects is if you move an object by dragging it, but hold down the Control button on the keyboard, the CTRL button, bottom left of your keyboard. When you let go, it will duplicate that object. This also works if you drag a selection, hold Control, and it will create duplicates of those objects where you let go. The quickest way to neatly add objects is to choose Paint Mode. It should be the second icon along. If it's not, right-click on that toolbar, go to Customize, go to Toolbars, and Reset All. That will reload the icons in the correct position. Turning Paint Mode on, you can select an object and then hold the mouse button down to paint it onto the screen. If you want to be very accurate, you can go into the grid with a cog, grid setup. You can turn on Snap to show and draw lines. A 32 by 32 grid is the exact size of our default object. To paint your object into a specific square on the grid, the top left of the object needs to be in that square. You can drag and select objects already in your frame to get them to snap into grid positions. If any of your objects are in the wrong place, you can delete them. You can right-click on them and choose Delete, or press Delete on the keyboard, the Delete button, but not backspace. That will just change to your last editor. If we run our application, we've now got a level made. We can move our character around and collect the coins till we're touched, but we don't have what's called a difficulty curve. Close your test application. The bad character is the same difficulty all the way throughout. So let's fix that. In the event editor, we'll do a new condition to do with the timer, every, and we'll change it to 5 seconds. On that row, right click under the shiny blue diamond, choose create object. We're going to create a bad object. Now we're going to create it relative to the bad character. We could have a set spawn area, but making it relative to the bad character means that the bad character will split every 5 seconds. If we run our application, when we get to 10 seconds, we should have 3, but we have 4. And when we get to 15 seconds, we don't have 5, we have 8. That's because when this code runs, it will create a bad object from every bad object already there. We need to insert a limit, and we do that by inserting a condition within a condition. So right click on the words every 5 seconds, choose Insert, and then from the bad object, pick or count, pick bad at random. That will then only apply the action to one of the bad objects randomly selected. So 1 becomes 2, and 2 will become 3. Now, because our world is filling up with bad characters, it's getting very difficult quickly. To balance that out, let's go back into the frame editor and change the movement properties of bad. Let's select the bad object, and under properties movement, let's choose a lower speed. Let's add a different way of increasing difficulty. Back in the event editor, it looks like a calendar, we'll add a new condition. Collision between P1 and coin. Now, we've already got a condition, collision between P1 and coin, but Clickteam doesn't mind. Once that condition is activated, it will run the first P1 and collision actions, and then the new condition, it would run the actions on that line. But to tidy it up, we will delete this event. To delete it, you right-click on the number of the condition. If we were to delete the words, it would just change it to never. So right-click on the number and choose delete. So going back to our earlier collision rule, P1 and coin, under bad, we will right-click and go to movement, set speed. We now get the expression editor, a selected number 50 in it. So whatever we type will overwrite that 50. So we're going to get the information from the bad object, movement, speed. If we were to leave the 50 in, then it would say 50 speed and say syntax error. We'd need to delete the number 50. So we've got the speed of the bad character, but we need to increase it. Press the plus character and 5. That's going to add 5 onto its speed every time we get a coin. So I get 1 coin, it's up by 5, it's now up by 10, up by 15, up by 20. You can see the bad objects are getting faster each time I collect the coin, but the new ones are still being created in with an initial low speed. Well done, you've made your first game in Clickteam Fusion. Make sure you save your work under File and Save, or by pressing the disk. If you want to do more, you can edit your artwork to improve the look of your game. So let's have a quick run through of the things we've learnt. We've learnt how to go into the frame editor to insert active objects. Under their movement properties, to give them a movement type so the player can control them. We used 8 directions. Then in the event editor, we've learnt about conditions, about position of leaving the play area, and the right-click action ticks. We've learnt about computer-controlled movement, bouncing ball. We've learnt how to add the score object to display our score. We've learnt the score value is held in the player 1 object. Then we learnt that we can use the timer to trigger conditions, and we can insert conditions within conditions to limit them. Hello, I'm Adam from Impact Gamers, and we have been teaching Clickteam Fusion for over 10 years, and we've even won awards for the way we do it.
From Impact Gamers CIC Bradford.
As this is the first Teaching in Fusion session, we're going to add advice about how to structure a teaching session. At Impact Gamers, we work with young people aged 8 years old and upwards. We find that 8-year-olds have the reading skills and the hand-eye coordination to be able to use a mouse well in order to navigate Fusion. Obviously, there are younger children who have those abilities, but we work with 8 years and upwards. Because Clickteam Fusion is such a free environment, allowing you lots of choices about game development, we limit our class sizes to 8 young people. And to support them, we'll have 2 or 3 workers. The way we lay out the room is that we have a teaching screen at the front, then the young people using the laptops, and then we teach from behind. We'll either use a wireless connection to the screen or a long HDMI lead. This layout is vital to allow the worker who teaches the session to see the young people's screens while they teach, so they can clearly see how well they're keeping up with the process. We teach using Windows laptops, and we'll also have each student have a mouse attached to their laptop, which allows them more speed and accuracy, but also when it comes to right-click for shortcuts, it's much easier for them to right-click. 2 useful things to set up on your teaching laptop is 1. The cursor size. Setting a cursor size of 3, 4, or even 5 allows the students to easily see where your cursor is. Setting it to the inverted style means it stands out at any point on the screen. Also, Windows has built-in magnifier. It's an application which allows you to zoom into the screen. The shortcut for that is holding the Windows button down and using the plus or the minus to zoom in or out. Full screen magnification settings work best rather than docked or lens. Our sessions will run for an hour long. We have been able to compact them down to 45 minutes, but it's tight, and we have been able to expand them to an hour and a half, but any longer than that, the students become less focused and less engaged. We often run the sessions weekly, which allows the students a gap to think about their game while they're away from the computer, which leads to much better design choices and creative input. We describe the game making process as a journey. We try to get the young people to lead as much as possible the design process, and we're there to keep them on track and help them out with any issues. Right from the beginning, we at Impact Gamers will put in 3 boundaries. 1. Make the game original. Don't use copyrighted work. If you're a fan of Mario, make a platform game. But don't make them a red plumber. Make this game your own. 2. No real-world violence. So that's no real-world guns, use laser guns or water guns or bubble guns, and no blood. So have enemies disappear, have zombies with green splats or robots with oil, but make the game family-friendly. That way it's much easier to promote their game to anyone playing it. 3. Reward the player, don't punish them. So don't add in tricks in your level that mean that the player loses their lives for doing something they believe is good, and don't add in jump scares. It's also good to mention making a small game well is far better than not finishing a big game. Some tips that really help the young people feel included is getting to know their names. To help us remember the names, we will stick labels on the right hand side under the keyboard on the palm rest of the laptop where the young person can write their name. That way, just by glancing at their laptop, we know their name. And finally, when starting the sessions, we make sure the young people are comfortable. We check with them that they understand that they'll be making a game. And for the first 3 sessions, we'll be guiding them on what style of game. The first session is an arcade-style maze game. So they might have heard of Pac-Man. We can show them an example of what the finished game will look like, but always we make sure we don't include artwork, just coloured blocks. This means the young people don't compare their game to our game, thinking that our game is better just because it looks nicer. And it also means that they can concentrate on gameplay and not worry about making their game look good. And we'll start the session off with a basic question, how's your day been? Or how has your week been? And get them to show with a case of thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle, how they're feeling. Making sure that young people have a chance to express themselves at the beginning of the session often means they won't interrupt during the session. So now we've got the setup done, let's look at how we do the teaching. Please make sure you've watched the earlier tutorial because we will reference back to it in this section. There's a few different techniques we use during our teaching. Firstly, repetition. Firstly, repetition. Firstly, repetition. We will repeat processes or phrases several times to really set it in the student's memory. When we describe something, we will describe it in a few different ways. We will use its technical name, we will use the area of the screen that it's on, and we'll describe the look, relating it to something from the real world. We do all this explanation to allow the students to see what we're pointing at the screen visually as well before we select it. Another thing that's hugely important to teaching games design is teaching the mistakes that easily happen and how to rectify them. So when using the free version of the game, we teach them that if they open 2 applications, then Fusion becomes locked because you've exceeded the limitations of the free version. By showing them that as a group means that when it happens later, it hopefully will allow them to be able to resolve it themselves and not slow down the teaching. And in the early part of the teaching, we do things that will allow us to evaluate the young people's use of the mouse. So to start off, we get them to double click on Clickteam to launch the application. Whichever young people are struggling with this, we can now get one of the spare workers to sit behind them to help guide them. I really recommend not taking over the mouse from the young person and doing things for them, but just supporting them through the process. If they're having extreme difficulty with mouse control, then I suggest plugging in a second mouse into the laptop so the staff member can aid them and support them, move the mouse to where it needs to be, and get them to do the double clicking or the clicking without unempowering them by getting them to take their hand off the mouse. Once Clickteam is open, it's a good idea to name areas of the screen. Point out the top menu. Explain it has words, file and edit, insert and run. Two of the menus will come back to regularly. Then, under the top menu, on the left, we have the workspace toolbar. Explain to them, this is where parts of your application, which is a long word for app, is shown. Draw attention to the red circle with yellow lightning to help describe the logo of their application. And underneath the workspace toolbar, explain it's really important to have the properties toolbar there to allow us to change settings, the way things appear on screen, the way they move on screen, and how we can name them. Whenever we teach a process in Clickteam Fusion, we teach the long process, not the keyboard shortcut, not the mouse shortcut. We do these because these long processes are visual, whereas the keyboard shortcut only work if the young people remember the names. So to start building the game, from the top menu, we're going to click on File, and next to the white piece of paper, there's the word New. So you're pointing out the top menu, and you're pointing out the icon for New, that blank piece of paper. Then we can see in the workspace toolbar that there's an application there with a red circle with yellow lightning. And for interactivity, ask them, how many frames are in your application? At this point, we're greeted by a new word, frame. When we teach, we say, a frame is a level. So if I talk about a frame, I'm talking about a level. If I'm talking about a level, I'm talking about a frame. How many levels, how many frames are in your application? This allows you to see that they have set up a new application and that they understand where the workspace toolbar is. We can now explain we're in the storyboard editor and we have a white piece of paper under the word thumbnail for frame 1. Get them to select it so it goes black. It's vital for the young people to understand about which editors do what in Clickteam Fusion. So we will draw attention to the editors. So on the top menu, underneath the words, there's some pictures. And this is where it's a good idea to use your magnifying tool to zoom in to these icons. We're going to go into the frame editor. And remember, frame is another word for, that's right, level. So it's the level editor. It looks like a blue, or you can describe it as purple or violet rectangle with a grey rectangle next to it. Click on that. Now the worker has a chance to see how everyone's screen is looking. If it loads the frame editor with that white rectangle with the grey area outside, great. If it's got the grid turned on, it's a good idea to get the other workers to go round and turn off the grids. At this point, we'll start the repetition about testing your application, running your application. This is a blank game. There's nothing in that. We can reference it to a real world situation. Like a blank piece of paper, before you draw anything, it's completely empty. If we play a game that's completely empty, it looks like this. Get them to select from the top menu, Run, and Application. This is where you can emphasize that while you're running an application, you can't build your game fully. You need to make sure you close your testing application. So making reference to before, you can see that your game testing window has that red logo with yellow lightning. You can see on the taskbar of Windows, we have that same logo there. So if you ever click on Clickteam Fusion to hide your test application, it may still be running in the background. So teach them about closing their test application, either from pressing the red X on the test application window or from the Windows taskbar at the bottom. For interactivity, I would ask them, what does a game need? And what we're looking for is a player, a character. So teach them to use the top menu, the word insert, and new object. Explain that everything you add is a new object. Get them to check that all objects is selected and explain that the player's character will need to move. So therefore it's active. Describe it. It's a blue person running. So get them to click on it, click on OK, and preempt that they have to left click to place the object in that white piece of paper. And if they right click, they'll lose it and they'll need to insert a new object again. So left click to drop it on the white piece of paper, and repetition. Run your application. Close your test application. Get them to test it. Ask them if they can move the object, which they can't, and make sure they close their test application. Repetition. Now we'll teach about the properties toolbar. The issues we have is it's empty when no object is selected, or we can close it. So make that a reality. Close your properties window and show them how they can go to View, Toolbars and Properties to turn it back on. Get staff to help to make sure the Properties toolbar is docked in the bottom left under the Workspace toolbar. Make sure they understand what object is selected by it having a blue square around it. And again, from technical term, location and description, explain to them that in the bottom left, in the Properties toolbar, we're going to go to the Movement properties, which looks like the blue running man from before. To make sure they're all there, ask them, what type of movement is set? If they say movement 0, ask them again, is that the type? Get them to understand that there are rows for each property. Once they come back with saying it's static, again, explain the term and describe it with real world. Yes, it's got a picture of the stop sign and then it says static, as in staying still, like a static caravan. If you click on the word static, now that we've drawn their attention to it, we can choose 8 directions, but not physics 8 directions, 8 with the letter E. Preempt their mistake and even give a location. It's about 5 down from the top, but you don't want to sound too clever at this point. And test your application. Don't tell them how this time. See how many have retained that knowledge of run application. Get them to explore what moves your character. They'll say the arrows, and you say, yes, the arrows or the cursor keys. Give them the technical name. Then ask, can anyone find a problem? If no one can, say, can anyone lose their character off the screen? At this point, get them to technically define the bug. Bug testing only works if people are clear about what the actual bug is. So if they say it's disappeared, you can ask, is it invisible? Well, no, it's not invisible. If they say it's gone, you can say, has it been destroyed? And they'll say, no, I can bring it back. So you say, so the issue is the position is that the character is leaving the screen. And that's no good for a player to not see their character. Close your test application. Get the workers to check that they can do that. Now to explaining the final editor view we're using, the event editor. So on the top menu, location, click on the event editor, technical term, which looks like a calendar, something from the real world. It's a grid of 3x3 squares. When the leader has seen that they've gone to the event editor, you can describe how the event editor works. Clickteam Fusion uses a grid setup for its events. Every row checks for something and then does an action. Conditions and actions. Use the technical term. Preempt the issue, so click on new condition, but the word new condition, and get them to start to understand the process. What was the problem we had? It was that our player character position was leaving the screen. You say, what is the player character? and that's the blue diamond or the greeny diamond. It's the position and test position of active. Now, this is a slightly unclear phrase, test position of active. And this is why we teach it first. Then use the same examples from earlier. So the frame area, that's your level, the white blank page, and then the outside the frame area is that gray area. So we want to click on the arrows that point. So description, we want to click on the arrows and then the location that point from the frame area outwards. So there's 4 arrows that are inside the frame area pointing outwards. Select all 4 and then press OK. Then clarify. Has everyone done that? Have people got, use the right term, the condition that diamond leaves the play area? Now to actions. You can devise any technique you like. I like to use real life example, maybe the door. The door is on the right hand side of us. Your mouse has a left button and a right button. We're going to use the right button. So that's the button that's closest to the door. We're going to right click under the player character, the bluey green diamond. Just right click once. Visually check. Have the different actions, use the technical term, popped up. Get the other worker to help if it hasn't. And what should happen when we leave the screen? You'll get different answers. Maybe it gets blown up or it stops. Pick out the ones that match stop, bounce. So we'll say, yes, we want to change its movement. So we'll choose either stop, bounce, or wraparound play area. At any point you can allow students choice, allow them choice. Once you choose your action, you get a tick. So remember, right click for tick. Using rhymes or mnemonics is a great way to teach. Get them to test the application. Get them to test all 4 sides of the frame area. Can they leave any? You're teaching them to be thorough game testers to allow proper debugging. Then empower them to make choices again. So explain that you can right click on a tick and delete an action to add a new action in to replace it. The repetition of right-clicking under the object for a tick is vital for any events you'll add into your game. Take them through the game development process thoughts. So we have a character that can move around the screen. Is it a game? Ask them that question. Teach them what a game is. Well, a game needs to have a goal, needs to have a way of losing, a way of winning or seeing your score. So explain you're going to add in a bad character, an enemy. And at this point, you'll need to check they've closed their test application and they go to the frame editor. Reference it again from the top menu. We're going to go to the frame editor. You point at it with your screen, maybe zoom in with the magnifier and describe it. It's got a blue rectangle and a grey rectangle next to it. They've only inserted an object once, so repetition help them out. So we're going to insert a new object from the top menu, click insert and then click and hopefully they'll respond new object. Is the enemy going to move? Well, yes, it is. So what will it need to be? Active. Click on the blue running person, press OK and left click to drop it on screen. Present them with the issue. We have 2 issues now, one for us and one for the player. What do you think the problem is between the player character and the bad character? They look the same. Get the response. Right, so we'll need to change the way they look. Maybe the names can help us as a programmer. They're called active and active 2. By using visual clues, you need to help the player out. And as a programmer, we need to name things accordingly. And that's why we give them short names and we call it P1, not player 1, because the other object in the game that represents you with your score and lives is player 1. And we'll use bad, as in the tutorial. And repetition of drawing them back to the properties toolbar and getting them to do things the long way. Renaming you can do by pressing F2, but by going through the properties toolbar and going to the yellow icon with the letter I in it, we can change its name. Doing it that long way allows us to lead them into the issue that they might click on the icon when they want to edit it at a later point, and that won't change the actual look. So get them into situations where they might make mistakes and guide them how not to. And the same thing for when we're editing the way that they look. Get them to right click on the object, to bring up all the extra options so that they can see that there's options of cloning, of ordering, aligning and frame, but then explain that you're going to use enter as a shortcut. This is the only time we get them to bring up shortcuts. And this works with young people who are still struggling with their left and right clicks. So enter is a good substitute for that. And also enter is one of the keys on the keyboard that often hasn't got its name written on it, along with shift and spacebar. Describe where things are. On the left hand side, you'll see something that looks like a saucepan. It's not, it's a magnifying glass. You can drag the slider to zoom in and out, but correct their learning before they mislearn something. You're not making the object bigger, you're just looking at it more closely. The other fact in the picture editor is that they need to click on OK. They can't just press the X to close it. Otherwise the details will be lost. This is a great time in the teaching to allow people who are behind to catch up. So allow 3 minutes or 2 minutes for them to change the way that something looks. In the tutorial, we get them to use the fill tool and raise the tolerance and have colored shapes. Give them a countdown to allow them time to finish off their artwork before you get on with the game development. So in 20 seconds, I need you to press OK and save your artwork. Press OK, 10 seconds. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and carry on with the session. It's also good to explain to students who are finding things easy, at any time you can test your application or you can edit your artwork. The whole session is designed for this repetition. When they've added the bad guy in, they add movement for the bad guy. Use descriptions. It says bouncing ball. There's a red bouncing ball. Preempt the issue. It's not physics bouncing ball. When you run it, it leaves the screen. What do you think the issue might be? And another thing to add in, collisions. Always ask them when they add something new in, what will happen? So what will happen if the P1 character collides with the bad character? And if they say, oh, you lose a life, say, well, try it. What does happen? Get them to understand that no code is automatically added in without us as the programmer choosing for it to be added in. What happens when the P1 object collides, use the correct terms, with the bad object? What do you want to happen when the P1 object collides with the bad object? And through the tutorial, we choose the simple, the P1 object is destroyed. It's the repetition, it's using the correct technical names and preempting problems that mean that the session will run really smoothly and everyone will have a fun little game at the end. So the learning outcomes for this session are making a new application, understanding what the editors do, being able to add new objects, mainly active, but also score, adding movement for different objects, and then adding events, specifically leaves the play area condition and collision conditions, so that the young person has a firm foundation for when they start the next session when we talk about building platform games. I hope that's explained the process of teaching and the tutorial at the beginning given you a good example that you can follow when teaching your young people how to make games in Clickteam Fusion 2.5. We'll see you at the next session. See you then.